Dobrodošli u 65. izdanje TV specijala danas konferenc centra Dođite na stadion. Pripremili smo za vas intervjue koje smo pripremili tokom naše posete Londonu od 5. do 8. novembra, analize koje bi trebale da pokažu kako izgleda u praksi privatno-javno partnerstvo i kako bi to privatno-javno partnerstvo moglo da zaživi u Srbiji i najavu početka registracije za prisustvo u publici na 3 konferencije i sajmu Ekonomija sporta koji se održava u četvrtak, 8. decembra u hali 3 Beogradskog sajma. Dobrodošli u danas konferenc centar. Jedna od najvećih britanskih građevinskih korporacija, Mott MacDonald, uključena je na mnogo načina u priču o sportskoj infrastrukturi, a jedan od ljudi koji je dugi niz godina uključen upravo u projekte stadiona jeste nedavni gost naše konferencije o sportskoj infrastrukturi, a naš domaćin u Londonu, Leon Higgins. Leon Higgins je čovek koji je 10 godina bio uključen u projekat nacionalnog stadiona Wembley, od samog nacrta pa do gotovog objekta koji godišnje prihoduje blizu 2 milijarde britanskih funti. Ovaj čovek bio je naš sagovornik i sada smo pripremili integralni intervju sa njim u kome možete da vidite ne samo priču o stadionu Wembley, nego i o modelima investicija i o njegovoj proceni kako izgleda investiranje u stadione u Srbiji iz perspektive jedne od najvećih građevinskih korporacija u Evropi. Nadamo se da će biti prilike da iskustvo kompanije Mott MacDonald bude predstavljeno i na prvom međunarodnom sajmu Ekonomija sporta. Ali u svakom slučaju, u najavi tog učešća želimo da vam prikažemo ovaj intervju koji bi po mnogo čemu trebao da bude veoma poučan, posebno u svetlu usvajanja zakona o javnom privatnom partnerstvu koji se dešava u Srbiji. We want to speak about model of investment that is behind this stadium. You are involved in this project for almost 10 years. What was the biggest challenge England built his national stadium? What was the greatest economical challenge and logistic challenge in the process of building new Wembley?
Well, I think the first challenge they had was where it was going to be, and initially there was a competition in about the location of the new national stadium, whether that should be more in the centre of the country or down here in London. Eventually, this site was selected, and there's some good reasons behind that. And in fact, there was an existing stadium; it had some infrastructure here. London still is the centre of gravity of the UK in terms of sports. So once that challenge was sorted out, the next challenge was to try and make it a viable stadium so that it would look after itself in terms of its commercial capability. And in order to do that, it's got very high hospitality. It is able to host concerts, football, NFL. They've even had Formula One inside it. So it's a very intensive events schedule that they run. And I think they got that mix right. Clearly they have. It's a very successful stadium. And that is really the key to unlocking this development. Yeah, they're limited in a number of events for planning reasons. There's a high amount of residential around this area. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's kind of around about 30 events a year that they have. But they do have quite a lot of other events which are not a full stadium, where you have conferencing facilities. Probably going every week there's something on here. I can only talk from my experience. I think you'll find in the UK, especially where you've got a catchment like London, you'll find stadiums like the Emirates and Chelsea very successful commercially. But then if you look at stadiums like in Stade de France, a different model, but that is also successful as well. So there are many models of stadium that, economic models that drive these things forward. It's a good mechanism. I think it de-risks it for stakeholders in the sense that it's got both usually some government support, but the private money in there as well. But the private side brings the commercialisation to it. They need to think about how they're going to get their money back. And what they're also usually does to a stadium is that they think about the operation of it. It's important to them, the cost of running it and designing it and getting that brief right at the start, and just reiterating again that the early consideration of the economic model of the catchment, what works in Wembley, you may not, wouldn't work necessarily in Manchester or in Belgrade. You have different catchment, different people, you'll have different sponsors, but the PPP mechanism brings together the stability of government funding and the innovation of private funding, and a desire to make it work. And it's really that desire to make it work right at the outset and commitment that delivers successful stadiums like this. So I think if I talk about Edgbaston Stadium, which is in Birmingham, and it's a cricket ground, and we recently completed that. Now that was the driver for that model. They similarly don't get much money on ticket prices. They can get the high-end hospitality on some matches, but once again they can't host that many matches of international level. So in order to fund their development, they did a land swap where they had loaned adjacent land, and they sold that on to developers to help fund their new stadium, and that's been very successful for them, because also in the UK there's a move to put people onto public transport, not to drive to your stadium. In fact, Wembley Stadium, there's very, very limited parking, so people are encouraged to come by public transport. And this releases the land, in the Edgbaston's case, to allow development like you can see going on at Wembley around it now, years later, to help fund that growth and so on. Now, perhaps this could be a model that works in Belgrade, but once again, it depends on what land availability you have, who owns that land, and what you can use it for.
Mr. Higgins, thank you for this interview, and I hope we'll see in near future in one of the stadium projects in Belgrade.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Drugi element priče o nacionalnom stadionu Wembley zanimljiv je iz više razloga. Jedan od razloga upravo je taj što pokazuje kako jedan fudbalski savez, u ovom slučaju Fudbalski savez Engleske, može da postane ne samo neka sportska organizacija, ne samo neka organizacija koja se bavi sportskim rezultatima, nego i ozbiljan privredni subjekt. Fudbalski savez Engleske stoji iza nacionalnog stadiona Wembley. Nacionalni stadion Wembley, 90.000 sedećih mesta, rasproda 40 puta godišnje po ceni ulaznice koja nije ispod 40 britanskih funti. Nacionalni savez Engleske, zatim, po toj nekoj matematici, prihoduje blizu 2 milijarde funti od svog nacionalnog stadiona. A na kraju, nacionalni savez postaje i neka vrsta konsultantske i investicione grupacije koja se bavi razvojem sportske infrastrukture ne samo u Britaniji, nego i van Velike Britanije. Zato vam puštamo u ovom našem izdanju integralni intervju sa Rodžerom Maslinom, izvršnim direktorom nacionalnog Wembley stadiona, čovekom koji je dugi niz godina uključen u život ovog po mnogo čemu legendarnog sportskog objekta, ne samo sada kada je to jedan od najboljih stadiona sveta, nego i u periodu kada taj stadion jeste počeo da biva zastareo i morao je da se sruši da bi se napravio novi. Sledi intervju koji bi takođe trebao da bude najava učešća Wembley Consultants Limited korporacije na prvom međunarodnom sajmu ekonomija sporta.
Mr. Maslin, thank you for this interview.
Absolute pleasure. It's always a great pleasure to talk about Wembley Stadium. I never get bored about talking about Wembley and seeing what we can do to help others, having built this fantastic stadium.
This is the national stadium, and one of the downsides of national stadium is a small amount of football games per year. This is not unsolvable issue, and maybe the best example for this is Wembley. How do you solve this issue of small amount of national games and cup games during the year?
I guess we're quite lucky because Wembley has a fantastic history of great events, and that's what we try and do. Our philosophy, if you like, is to try and provide the best possible the best stadium experience in the world. And to do that, we try and marry 2 or 3 things. First of all, it's the events themselves, and perhaps we can talk about that in a minute. Secondly, of course, having some great facilities. It really helps to have a wonderful stadium. But perhaps most important of all, it's the service side. It's providing a fantastic service for those people who provide the events to us, our event owners, of course the fans, and of course the members that for us actually funded the stadium, our particular members. Yes, well, we've been around for a long time, and we've always had a number of events, ranged from football through to rugby league, rugby union, and of course music. And hitherto we've had papal visits, we've had ski jumping, you name it, we've had it here in Wembley. And that really is the key when we're talking earlier about marrying events and facilities and service. You have to have the events. So what we try and do is we do have a number of events here that are based on long-term staging agreements. As ever, content is king. You really do need to have as much content as you possibly can. So start with football, obviously big sport in Serbia, 8 million people, or I'm sure wanting to play football. You really have to try and get an anchor tenant, somebody who will play all their games in the stadium itself, whether it's a club game or whether indeed that's an international game. So to really have the right business plan, you need to have long-term content, so staging agreements with the teams for as long as you possibly can. Well, we were slightly different. Yes, we were the benefit of some public money, lottery money, of £120 million worth of lottery money, so about 20% of the building cost of New Wembley. So it depends really on what your model is. Of course, you can get the government, the state, to basically fund the whole amount, or you can get almost the whole amount funded by business. In our case, we are 80% through the banks and through commercial finance, and 20% through, if you like, lottery funding government. So it depends a little bit on really what kind of business plan you can put together. If you can develop the content and the right business model, then you'll have a project which can be financed within the markets. But these days, with the financial turmoil in the market, it's very difficult to raise substantial finance unless you've got a fantastic business plan. We were really lucky in that we've got staging agreements for 20 or 30 years that guarantee the fantastic content that we have here at Wembley. In any finance, you've got to weigh up, obviously, the cost of the stadium with the facilities and those base revenue streams. We're a national stadium, so we don't have access to some of the really big revenue streams, such as broadcasting rights, TV rights, and sponsorship. We have to provide our facilities, if you like, as a landlord. We don't own any events. We just put on events for the event owners. So we don't have access to any of the big rights. And that's where a lot of the money is these days in terms of TV and sponsorship. So if you look at the clubs around England, that's where a large amount of money comes from. So we have to provide other revenue streams through a diverse set of events and our own members club, if you like, that we provide great facilities, and they effectively take out a 10-year license so they can guarantee that whatever events here, they can come and see our fantastic array of sport and entertainment. I think, again, there's a lot of history, of course. Now, Wembley's been here a long, long time, and it's become part of the fabric of being English, of being British. So every country will have its own argument as to whether you want a national stadium or not. But when you have a national stadium, it gives a fantastic sense of pride that everybody can belong and feel we're a part of that. So that sense of belonging is really, really important, particularly with fan engagement. And again, to try and create that fantastic stadium experience, if the fans, the event owners are coming here and they feel very much part of the stadium, then you're halfway there to having a very successful event. I think these kinds of projects can be really, really important. If you look at Wembley, I think the stats were something like we created 10,000 people years worth of jobs just by building this wonderful asset. But it wasn't just the 700 million or so that was spent in and around Wembley, but all the other infrastructural projects. And we were like a catalyst. So we've started something, and you'll see a lot of development now around Wembley of many, many billions of pounds. And that's the kind of starting effect that some of these big infrastructural projects have. The reality was that most of Wembley was funded privately. However, obviously the state and the combination of state and private money, so the PPP partnerships that have been very popular and very successful here in the UK, those kind of partnerships again will only increase investment and starting to get a few more people back into work, which is always a good sign.
Prvi međunarodni sajam ekonomija sporta dešava se u četvrtak 8. decembra u hali 3 Beogradskog sajma. Počela je registracija svih onih koji žele da budu u publici u svojstvu fizičkih ili pravnih lica prisutni na ovim konferencijama koje bi trebale da govore o medijskim, korporativnim i infrastrukturnim aspektima ekonomije sporta. Broj mesta je ograničen. Neće biti ulaznica niti bilo kakvog slobodnog pristupa, tako da smo za vas, kao odjavu ove naše epizode, jubilarne 65. pripremili kratko uputstvo za registraciju na prvom međunarodnom sajmu ekonomija sporta. Pratite nas redovno u petak, 21 čas, samo na SOS kanalu.
Prvi međunarodni sajam ekonomija sporta.
Infrastruktura, mediji, korporativni sponzori. Četvrtak, 8. decembar 2011. Hala 3 Beogradskog sajma.
Prijavite se.
Za nepune 3 nedelje počinje prvi međunarodni sajam ekonomija sporta i mnogi naši gledaoci, posetioci našeg sajta pitali su nas kako mogu da budu prisutni, da li se prodaju ulaznice ili tome slično. Hteli smo da pripremimo za vas jednu kratku prezentaciju da vidite na koji način možete da rezervišete svoje mesto na ovom događaju koji će biti, da kažemo, veoma specifičan sajam koji će imati svoj izložbeni i konferencijski deo i na koji se neće moći ući sa nekom ulaznicom i za koji ulaznice neće biti u slobodnoj prodaji. Ovo je web sajt danas.rs, web stranica dnevnog lista Danas. I kao što vidite, postoje baneri koji direktno vode na neke od konferencija na sajmu ekonomija sporta, a i same te konferencije nalaze se na ovom spisku konferencija. Kako se možete akreditovati? Klikom na neki od ovih banera dolazite na konferenciju, konkretno ekonomija sporta, infrastrukturni investicioni modeli. Tu možete naravno vidjeti našu TV produkciju koju smo pripremali u Londonu, ali ono što je važno, to je akreditacija za učešće na konferencijama. Tu se nalazi akreditacioni formular za pravna i fizička lica, koji se preuzima, popunjava, odštampa i pošalje po uputstvima koji se nalaze tu. Postoji posebno polje za pravna lica i posebno polje za fizička lica. Tako da se ovaj formular smatra, da kažemo, rezervacijom mesta i nakon rezervacije tog mesta, kada napunimo celokupni kapacitet raspoloživih sedećih mesta, više ulazak na prvi međunarodni sajam ekonomija sporta neće biti moguć. Tako da je ovo, da kažemo, završni deo ove naše priče koja počinje u četvrtak 8. decembra u hali 3 Beogradskog sajma, dok se privodi kraju apsolutno i sva ostala logistika oko programa, tako da bi već od sledeće epizode trebali da najavimo i paneliste i učesnike u programu ove 3 konferencije koju spremamo u sklopu prvog međunarodnog sajma ekonomija sporta. Hvala vam na pažnji i prijatno.